And you can hear me okay with the audio?
Yeah, we're all good.
All right, at least I got that going for me. All right. Hey everyone, welcome back. It's Ashley, and today I'm joined by Jason Bahamundi. Jason is an endurance athlete, entrepreneur, and founder of Run, Try, Bike, on a mission to help people embrace the fun and excitement and personal growth that endurance sports has to offer. He is passionate about breaking down barriers and creating a welcoming space for people of all backgrounds. And through his platform, he helps people connect and share stories and find inspiration to persevere through life's challenges and keep showing up. So there's a lot of symmetry here. I'm excited for this conversation. Jason, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, Ashley, thanks for having me on. By the way, I don't know who wrote that introduction, but we need to hire them so that we can broadcast that everywhere. That was awesome.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm honored. No, it's really cool. Before we get started, I wanted to give a shout out to, our mutual friend, Jonathan Levitt. He recently joined me on the podcast. I know that you've been a guest on his, and I just love the possibilities of connection with one another and conversations that can come as a result of that. And it's opportunities like these that I have, through podcasting that has inspired me to keep showing up in this space, because I get to learn more, about people like yourself and just hear these stories and perspectives. And so without much information and context going into our conversation, it's like, hey, you can, in just a short bit of time, you can learn so much about somebody. And it's really interesting to me. I know I don't even know the half, of who you are and what you do and what you've done and your amazing stories that you have. But just from what I've gathered, it's inspiring to see, and learn about your journey. So I'm excited to chat and, actually have this kind of conversation.
Me too. And I think you inadvertently touched on something there that I think people who are listening to your show need to understand, right? You don't know half of my story, right? And I think what people need to do is keep telling their story over and over and over and over again. And some days you might think to yourself, everybody's heard this before, but the reality is the vast majority of people haven't. We're recording this conversation right now. There's a bazillion TikTok videos going up, a bazillion Twitter posts going up, a bazillion Threads posts going up that we'll never see, right? And so people have to be out there telling their story constantly, because it's through our own stories that we can connect to other people and then learn and grow and just become better at whatever it is that we're doing in life. So keep telling your stories and letting people connect with you. So I'm super appreciative of what you're doing and leaning into your own podcast and your own show.
Thanks, Jason. I appreciate that. And I love what you said about, again, just to echo the sentiment of we don't know the half, right? Like we think, okay, I know this about you, but I know that I don't even know, and that's always what I remind myself of that a lot, because I think it just creates this awareness, right, of one another. And, sometimes, people that you feel like their stories and you have this special connection with, and then you're in these situations where someone else interacts with them on the surface and may say something like, oh, why do they say this or why do they say that? And in my mind, I'm like, oh gosh, but if you really knew this person, like, you wouldn't have said that. You know what I mean? And so, yes. But it creates, I think it increases our own capacity to just have this awareness and really dig in with one another, ask questions, and really seek to understand. Because when we do that, it's really hard. I love the quote that's like, it's hard to hate somebody up close. Like when you know somebody's story, it's like, it's really hard to have this kind of, I don't know. I feel like that, right? It's like something shifts whenever you actually know somebody, because you can make sense of the things that we are so quick to judge on the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 51 years old, and I say this all the time. The things that people post online to each other that are just derogatory and slanderous and angry, the vast majority of those people wouldn't say that same thing to a person's face, and certainly wouldn't say it if they got to hear their story and got to connect with them and got to learn more about them than what they see in, 240 characters. Like,
totally.
That's just not enough.
Totally. For sure. No, it's so true. And I love, again, yeah, just the space that you've created and that you're building with what you're doing. So I want to go there. So to open up, can you just share a bit about your journey? I know you're an endurance athlete, specifically in triathlons, which is really amazing to me. I have so much respect for triathletes and that kind of event. As someone is in the endurance space and running, but to take it a step further in that. So share a little bit about your journey in that way. And then when you realize that endurance wasn't just about the ability to go further in a race, but really about a deeper personal growth.
How long is your show?
Hey, I'm here for it, I mean, I don't like to put constraints on that, right?
Fantastic. So to discuss my, quote unquote resume in endurance sports, I started in 2007. So entering my 18th year and doing these things. And I was voluntold back then that I was going to be running in a half marathon. I lived in New York, so it was the Westchester half marathon, and had been an athlete in high school and whatnot. And I thought, I got this, I can run. And I learned a lesson real fast that, running on a baseball diamond 90 feet or running, 5 yards on a football field and running a mile are not one and the same.
Totally. I understand. I come from a basketball background, and I was, realized that quite quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. Shuttle runs and 400-meter repeats are not the same.
They're not the same.
And so I quickly learned, but I realized how much I missed competing. I missed the energy and the adrenaline rush. And it just took off. So half marathons led to marathons, led to sprint and Olympic distance triathlons, to half Ironman, to Ironman, to trail running and ultras and multi-day events. And it just, one thing led to another. And it was all about learning about myself. What can I do today that I didn't do yesterday? And now I have the confidence to do it, because I did this other thing. And so over the course of 17 years, hundreds of events probably, the ones people tend to grasp are, I've completed 8 Ironman triathlon distance events. I've completed 800 milers. I raced the initial Cocodona 250 back in 2021. And so that's like the resume part of it, but I think there's so much more to endurance sports than the finish line. And it's the camaraderie, it's the connection to people, it's the stories that we share when we finish training, right? If you're in a run club, after that run, you're either going to get donuts and croissants and coffee, or maybe it's beers, and you're all sitting around and you're just telling stories and laughing, and the protective barrier is removed. Right? You're raw and you're vulnerable, and you're talking about how hard something was, how difficult it was, or you're dispensing advice to help somebody get through that hard, difficult time. And we get connected to each other. And then we start to grow together. And then we're like, hey, are you doing this marathon? Are you doing this Ironman? Let's do it together. And now you just keep connecting to each other and growing and telling those stories together. And I think, to me, that is one of the beauties of endurance sports, that when people first get started in them, they don't realize that that's what's going to happen. They don't realize that's the transformation.
Sure. And it's so organic in a lot of ways, because you just, you start out and maybe you have a small goal to start, and then you join a community, and then you meet these people, and then you find those places of connection, just like you're describing. And that's a ripple effect then. And you feel like, oh, I'm part of this thing, and it's bigger than myself. And it's not just about reaching, this certain goal. It's about what it is that we're learning. I'm learning myself, and then what I'm learning about other people, and that's amazing. I wanted to go back. So you had mentioned, in doing all of these different events and everything, about the things that you have learned about yourself, and I would love to go there, because as someone who is, I've been a competitive athlete, right? And I've struggled with performance pressure. And it's really a big reason why I even started a lot of this podcast, because I wanted to create a space where I'm going to take all of that off. There's no outcome goals with this podcast. It's not a big production. It's like, let's see how and where it goes, and be open to, the fruit in the process. And it has it has been that and more. And so I wanted to dig in a little bit from your perspective, in training and all of these things, and from a competitive side, what is it that you've learned about yourself, and how have you learned to kind of take that pressure off when it comes to reaching certain numbers or metrics, in that way, which I think as competitive people, we have those kind of goals.
I think the thing that I've learned the most is failure isn't terminal. It's a building block to success. I would love to sit here and tell you over the course of 17 years, every training run went the way it was designed, every race went the way it was designed, but that would be demonstratively false, right? Mm-hmm. There have been moments where you wanted to go out and get 10 miles in, and 6 miles into it, you're like, this is way harder than it should be, and you pull the plug. I've had my share of DNFs in races, and that happens. And what I've realized is, go ahead.
I wanted to stop you there. When you've done that, how have you given yourself permission to do that? Did you have to overcome something mentally in those ways to be able to say, hey, I got to drop out, or I got to do this because that's the best decision for yourself in that?
Yeah, it's not easy. My very first DNF I cried at because it was like, man, I'm not going to finish the thing that I had planned on finishing.
That's the thing.
But I realized in the moment that event also wasn't the A race of the year, let's say. And there was something else that was there that I was more interested in training for and participating in. So the story is, I was racing a 69-mile race. It's 2 loops of 34.5 miles. I had tripped and fall, covered in sand. It was a hot, humid day in Texas. I was angry that I was covered in sand. I'm like, Ironman Chattanooga training is coming up in a handful of weeks. Like, do I really want to put myself through this process again, getting dehydrated, sore, and everything else? And so I stood at the start-finish line, and the race director came over because he was concerned. Like, is this guy okay? Is he going to pass out? Like, do we need to get him help?
Yeah.
And when he asked me, he's like, what's wrong? And I was like, I'm trying to figure out if I want to do this because I'm going to be training for Ironman Chattanooga in a few weeks. And he looked at me and he said, go sit down. This is not that important. It was like he gave me permission. And this is from the race director who, again, you want to have a high finisher rate. You want people to tell stories about your event. And he kind of gave me permission. And I cried. I absolutely cried that I wasn't finishing something that I had started. And after that moment of emotion, and I started seeing people coming in to either finish their first loop or some shorter distance races, the finish line was the same. I got up and started helping them and getting them, ice and everything else. And it was like a moment, a light bulb moment, shall we say, where it was like, wait a minute, I didn't finish, but nobody here cares. Not a single person was like, hey, if you're giving me water before you do that, did you finish the race, right? Literally 0 people cared. And it was like, okay, this is cool. Like, nobody cares if I DNF this race or not. And it's not that I use that as an excuse every single time, right? Because I still want to finish. I still want to compete. But understanding that the world is going to continue to spin, whether I finish an event or not, gives me that permission to take risks now, to push my limits, to go further, to go faster than I wanted to go, kind of thing. And I think the idea of taking risks and betting on myself, which is a mantra I have for myself in our company, starts to take shape, and you start to build confidence in it. And another thing that we use in our company is failure isn't terminal, it's the building block to success. And so go take a chance, see what happens. If it doesn't work out, what did you learn from it, as opposed to shut it all down, go home, didn't work, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, that's so good. I love that mindset and how you're right. Like, the world does go on. I think sometimes we think that everyone is looking at us in a way of like, and then we kind of make it about that perception about somebody else versus like, hey, why am I actually doing this? And I went through this whole journey and was training for my first full marathon, and then COVID happened and it got canceled, and I had done all these for me, right, which is a big deal because I've done half marathons for 10 years and that was always my thing, my first one. And I went through this whole thing of like, wait, why am I really doing this? And it took me down an important, internal journey, because I realized so much that it was just like, all of these different questions, right, that were coming up, and perceptions of other people and how they saw me. And I always identified as an athlete, as a basketball player. And so I wanted to maintain this identity of like, oh, I can do this stuff. I can achieve these kind of things. I can do all of that. And coming back to like, whoa, but I lost so much of just the enjoyment of why I even started running, because I was just chasing these certain, like, I got to do, when I cross the finish line, I'm going to do this. And you miss out on all the things that you learn in the process. And so that experience for me really shifted how I approach goals. And I've worked with somebody in this, and, she is always, we talk about what if the goal isn't the goal. And that's really about just going deeper, right, into, the process of the things we're going for. And then how that how it opens up for more possibilities, and how you realize, oh, I'm actually doing all of these things, but the goal looks different. So anyway, I love that.
I think one of the things that's coming across between the two of us talking about this that listeners need to understand is, just because we can talk about this freely, about introspection, about changing goals, about failure, it doesn't mean that it is easy.
No, 100%.
Right? Like
This helps.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, we have a podcast on our Everyday Athlete Podcast Network called Enduring Minds, and it's about men's mental health. And I just did my episode, and we talk about the things that we go through in the dark rooms, right? The processing, the asking of questions, the anxiety and the stress. And through endurance sports, I've come to learn that I can handle those things, and I can ask myself the hard questions, and why am I doing this, and why do I continue to do this, and is this for me today? And if it's not, that's okay. Put it on the shelf and go find the thing that is. But it's not easy. Like, for your audience to listen to this, just understand that Ashley and I are able to do this because we have conversations, because we talk to people, because we air our dirty laundry, shall we say?
Totally.
Which is not easy to do. But once you do it, it gets easier.
100%. Yeah, because it is a journey. Like, I feel like I'm still on it, right? And that's why I like to have these kind of conversations, because it helps me through the very same thing. And then when you do that, it's like, oh, that opens up dialogue with somebody else, because they see you talking about this thing. Okay, they want to join in. And hey, I've experienced this struggle here. And then we have this common ground, and we can relate to one another. And I can share with you the ways that I've gotten through, right? Like, all my friends know, like, I always talk about, I talk about people that I've worked with and coach, and like all these things. Like, these are the things that I'm learning. Yeah, I love that you bring that up, because that's all it is. It's not like, hey, it's not like you get over it and you're on the other side and that's it. Like, this is the forever journey that we're on.
If only. We have a series on our website called Enjoying the Journey. And we as a company are going to be racing Javelina at the end of this year in 2025. And I'm going to be documenting my process. And so part of my first installment for this journey is talking about how, when I raced Rocky Raccoon a number of years ago, I had always had this goal of breaking 19 hours at a 100-mile distance. And the fastest I had gone was like 19:12. And to this day, 720 seconds still bothers me. Like, it's like the idea of, like, if I didn't stop at the aid station, if I would have run, 720 seconds over the course of 100 miles is nothing, right? If I would have run a handful of seconds faster, or walked a handful of seconds faster, maybe not go to the bathroom for as long. I keep replaying that in my mind to this day, and it's now part of my goal at Javelina, which I'll be close to 52 at the end of this year, to break 21 hours. And so that's my goal, but that 720 seconds still sits there, and it's just part of the self-reflection that I have for myself to push myself, to inspire and motivate myself to get to that goal at the end of this year. And I just think it's a big part of having these conversations and connecting to other people and learning from them all along the way, so you can make changes to the things that are important to you and get rid of the things that aren't.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you think about the training that goes into that, like prior to race day, right? And that's what it's like. You're having that vision, having that goal. And, whatever the outcome is of that, it is that. But I think sometimes within our goals, like we don't pay attention sometimes to the process of getting there. And that's where all the growth, I think, is, right? Is in the endurance that's building within us is happening in these moments, not just the one that everyone gets to see at the end when you achieve that thing.
Yeah, it goes, Muhammad Ali, I don't know the exact quote, but it's something along the lines of champions are made in the dark, right? And so while we are posting our glorious highlights on Instagram and TikTok, right? It's those moments of self-reflection that nobody sees. It's the miles that you spend at 5 a.m. or 8 p.m., depending on who you are, that nobody sees, that is going to make a difference on race day. But you have to be able to stop for a moment and not worry whether, pardon me, Suzanne in Sarasota, Florida, if you actually exist, whether Suzanne in Sarasota, Florida.
I don't think Suzanne's a listener of this podcast, but maybe.
But like, who cares that Suzanne in Sarasota, Florida likes your post or not, right? Like, you have to reflect on what it is that you're doing so that you can achieve your goals and not do it for the kudos on Strava or the like on some social media platform somewhere. And then be able to process all of that to then say to yourself, I've done this. Can I do something else? Can I do it faster? Is there something I can do better? Can I now start a company? Can I start a podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the beauty in it, right? I think in doing these hard things and accomplishing these goals is it builds confidence. And you see, I can actually do this. Like, for the marathon, I always thought my limit was the half marathon. And so now, even though I've had a surgery, I've done, like, my running looks a little bit different now. I'm still like, hey, let's get it straight. It's not because I couldn't be able to do it. It's just I'm making a wise decision for my body now and where I'm at, that I'm not doing that. But I'm telling, I'm like, I can do it, because what I, went through when I was training for the marathon, I was there, I was ready, So that is, okay, look, I did this thing, and that determination, that commitment, and everything in the process, and how that translates then into other areas of life. And, starting a business or doing, or trying a new thing and starting a new, you have that confidence. I wanted to go back to your point on Suzanne, and so
Sorry, Suzanne and Sarah.
Sorry, Suzanne, if you're out there. That's hilarious. No, but I want to talk about social media pressures, because you've been pretty open about this in interviews that I've heard, you on before, and just some of your past struggles with that. And I think that it's something that we're all, exposed to. And I think a lot of us are on some sort of social media, and there's a lot of pressure there. There's a lot of, comparison. And I think that it's a good tool, but it can be harmful in ways. And I've experienced that myself mentally. I've had to, like, really realize, what am I using this for, and how am I consuming things, and paying attention to how that's affecting me mentally, and knowing where I need to make adjustments. So what's your take on that?
We've built a business on social media, but simultaneously, it can't be the end all be all for us or for anybody. I don't know if you heard the podcast or read, I've talked about my disordered eating issues. A large part of that stems from my triathlon days, where lighter is faster, and I would post to social media a meal that I've eaten, but that was the only meal I've eaten for the day, right? But nobody knows that. They just see this one meal and that's it. But they don't see that I'm, like, drinking water and only water. And then at the end of the night, I'm in the pantry inhaling donuts because I'm starving, or, throughout the day I'm eating candy at the office. They don't see that. And so I'm openly talk about that, because I know that there are other people who are struggling with it, and I know that it'll help others. It wasn't easy to talk about it. It wasn't easy to write about it. As a matter of fact, the draft sat in our back end of our website for months. And I will tell you, the moment I pressed publish, I closed my laptop. I turned my phone off. I was like, let it sit out there.
You don't want to see the response?
I don't want to see the response. It was a way of protecting my health, my mental health. I shut it all down. I walked away. And to my delight, when I did open everything back up, there were positive comments. Hey, I've gone through this. I had people reach out to say, I'd like to talk about my disordered eating as well. And that gave me the confidence to talk about this stuff. But social media can be a really big drag on our ability to block out the noise and start comparing ourselves to other people, and then also start to do things we don't want to do because we want to get that dopamine hit. I've been using this example a lot lately. Social media has distorted so much of our lives that if I see Ashley put up a post and she gets 100 likes and I put up a post and I get 20 likes, I think I'm not worthy. But if I was at a networking event and 20 people walked up to me and they said, hey, I heard your speech and it was fantastic, like we'd be on top of the world.
100%. I love that example because, and not to interrupt you, but I love that example because it's that very same thing that I connected with Trent Shelton, if you're familiar with him. He's a motivational speaker. And when I first started my podcast, I was like, you have this major platform, right? And he encouraged me so much to do this. And he said that very same thing that you said, Jason, about he's like, look, 20 people, 50 people, 100 people, put those people in a room. That's a lot of people.
Yes, that's exactly right. And all of a sudden, when you look at it through that lens, your confidence goes through the roof. And one of the things I keep telling my partners, and I yell this at the business partners that we're trying to bring in to be advertisers, it's like, look, likes ain't money, bro. Like, I don't care that we have 20 likes or 100 likes or 500 likes. Are we having conversations? Because the conversations is what connect us. Yes. And over the course of the last 4 going on 5 years now, we as a company and me as a person have had more conversations than you see likes. Like if you go to some of our posts, you'll see like 5 likes and 50 comments.
And so much is not in your control anyway, right? Like exactly. You don't even, you see that and it's like you can't control and determine, how it's going to show up on feeds, like truly. Like, and you look, if you have a business account and you have something on there, it will show you that only, it was only exposed to 15, percent of your followers or something. And it's like, they're not even seeing the content to be able to engage with it. And that's the thing that I think it can be, to your point, so discouraging to someone to say, oh, I only got like 10 or 15 likes. It wasn't even exposed. Like people didn't even see the content. But what you're doing here in these spaces and having the conversations that you're having. And I love, you bringing in the everyday athlete, right? Because that's so powerful because we all have something to share and you don't have to have some big, social following or don't have to be a celebrity or an elite athlete to share something valuable that can encourage that next person that can relate actually to that, maybe more so than relating to the celebrity, Yeah, 100%. I love that.
I'm lucky, fortunate enough that I was born with an outgoing personality as an extrovert, right? Like I'm the guy who's at the grocery store and I see somebody, feeling the cantaloupe and I'm like, oh, is it fresh today? Like I'm that guy. I'm going to talk to you. I don't care who you are. And I've had more conversations with strangers on the street than I can count. But I just find it as a great way to connect and learn and be able to grow as a person because I get to hear different stories. And we say this all the time. Your story matters. And why does your story matter? Because it's unique. Nobody else has that story. So tell it and share it. And let people know that here's the thing that I'm doing and here's the thing that I'm going through so that we can all get together and have fun, right? What's fun at a dinner party? Let's say we're at a round table and there's 10 people and there's people just talking over each other, right? And everybody's having fun. Isn't that a better picture than if it was one person sitting at a dinner table and just talking at everybody?
Yes.
And nobody commenting back.
Yeah. No, that's a great picture for sure. No, it's so true. I mean, I've had the unique opportunity to interview people from elite athletes to people who are, more in the spotlight here, to a neighbor, to someone who's a CEO, in all of these different walks of life. And the common denominator, right, is just like we all have something in common, right? We all can you can find a place of connection with everybody. When people come on and they're like, oh, I don't have anything to share. Like, why would I come on your podcast? I'm like, no, you're exactly what yes, you. Yes, come on. I don't know what you think this is. People will write to me, Jason, and be like, do I meet the criteria to come into your podcast? And I'm like, yeah, like, no, like, there's no criteria. Like, what? It's funny to me because I'm just like, this is the space I want to create. It's open to everybody, It's so cool to me. And afterwards, they're like, oh my gosh, I've never been interviewed before. I've never been on a podcast before. And I'm like, well, like, and people will send me messages who are listeners and they're like, oh my gosh, I listened to Sean's story. Like, that was so crazy. Or like Julia's story, that was so crazy. And I'm like taking screenshots like, look, your story, it matters.
Yes.
It's so cool
fun,
to me.
right?
I love doing it. I love it. I'm like, I really love it. Yeah.
One of the things I learned from my mentor is to not ask the question that everybody expects to be asked, which is, what do you do for a living? Right? That's boring. I'll be honest, right? That's a boring question to ask, because what if somebody said, I'm an aeronautical engineer?
Yeah.
You don't know anything about aeronautical engineering, so now the conversation's dead in the water.
Right.
What he taught me was, ask them what they do for fun, because everybody has a different definition of fun, but their definition is what's important to them, and
Yes.
they will be electric in their answer. They will come out and talk about it, because some people may hate their job, right? So what do you do for a living? And they're like, well, I write
my
for...
job sucks.
Exactly. And the conversation just comes to a screeching halt.
Exactly.
But if you ask them, what do you do for fun? And then all of a sudden the conversation starts pinging all over the place, and you get into it, you learn, and then you say, oh, you do that? You should try this.
Yes.
Or let me connect you to Joe, because Joe does that too.
And that's what happens.
Yep.
And that's, that lights me up, because I'm like, this is what's happening. I'm connecting with people, and being able to, have these kind of conversations that wouldn't have been possible if someone else wouldn't have made that connection and say, hey, you two should meet. Right?
Yes.
Like, there's some commonalities here. You would hit it off in a conversation. And that's literally what happened. Okay. So, what question's coming next for you?
I wish I knew.
What do you do for fun?
So I love television and movies. Like, I could sit on my couch for hours on end, or I could go to a theater for hours on end and watch television and movies. That to me is fun. But to get into the weeds about it, like, I love looking for things that get screwed up in TV shows and movies. So, for example, last week we were watching one of the Law and Orders, and the detective closes the door when they go into the interview room, and then the next scene the door is open, like literally in a second. And I'm like, how did somebody miss that? Like, why was somebody on set not like, close the door?
That is
And so
amazing.
yeah, and so that for me is a little bit of fun, right? It's like, what happened in this filming and editing of this that they realized that the door
They
is
missed
now
something.
open, or they just
Yeah.
So I love TV shows and movie. I also am a huge fan of food. I talked about my disordered eating a few minutes ago, and after getting that off of my chest in a way, like, now talking about food is awesome, right? My favorite food is Ethiopian food. Like, that is something I can eat constantly. And I just love talking about food and engaging people in their food preferences. I love hearing, I'm a New Yorker. I don't put pineapple on pizza. It's a huge nay. But if you want to put pineapple on pizza, cool, enjoy it. I'll never do it, right? And that's, so for me, like, enjoying a meal with somebody or a coffee with somebody is a blast.
I love that. When did you get first exposed to Ethiopian food, and how did that love come about?
I was living in Dallas, Texas, and a lot of Ethiopian dishes are vegetarian/vegan as an option, and I'm a plant-based lifestyle, and so being able to eat and like, I've always said this because I love to cook too. If it doesn't taste good, stop eating it. It's okay. You don't have to, like, just throw it down your throat just because. And so I was like, yeah, let's go try the Ethiopian place. And I just fell in love with it. First of all, no utensils. Let's eat with our hands, which is pretty damn cool,
Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
rip off the injera bread, you're grabbing lentils or potatoes
I love
and
that.
spinach.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm all in, right? And that, I also think, lowers our force field that we put around us because we're now messy, right? As opposed to proper fork and knife eating, we're now messy and we're vulnerable in that moment with each other because we're eating this way, which is not commonplace in American society. And so I think that is also another part of eating Ethiopian food that I love, that allows us to use the injera as the utensil as opposed to knife and fork or spoon, let's say. And some of it can be spicy, which I also like too, which is also a big plus for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting. And I love that point on just the, and just the way that you're eating and how that there's a sense of vulnerability in that, right? Of just, I don't know. Sometimes we feel like we have to be so proper sometimes. And I think when you kind of were like, oh no, we're all in this together. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, and so I don't know if you've had if you've had permani sandwiches. Well, we put on French fries on our sandwiches, and they're these massive sandwiches, and it's like when you go and you bite into it, you're like, all right, well, here we go. But it's the thing, like when you're all there together, it brings you together because you're all just making a mess, right? And there's napkins everywhere and ketchup, and it's the whole thing. But it's like, hey, we're all here together, and it's something, it brings you together. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, food is communal, and it's amazing the opportunities you have when you have meals with people. Like, we're big fans of saying, we won't tell you to not eat at our table. We'll just build a bigger table because we want to have people sit around and talk about things. We were at the running event in Austin, Texas, and we went to the airport to leave, and it was a big table. There was a single gentleman sitting there, and the waitress said, do you want to sit with him? And I was like, well, if he's open to us sitting there, sure.
Yeah.
And so we sat down, and we're loud. Well, I'm loud. My partners aren't as loud as I am. So I'm loud, I'm talking, I'm laughing, and I'm demonstrative with my hands and everything else. And I look at him and I'm like, I apologize, if we're being loud. And he's like, no, I don't care. And he starts talking to us and he starts giving us his story. Turns out it's Steven Glickman, who's uber popular, does voiceovers for Disney and all of these things that I had no idea, right? And he starts telling us stories and we're telling him stories and we're just sharing a meal together and killing time before we board our plane to come back to LA. And I think that's a great example of having dinner or lunch in this case with people / strangers and having a conversation all at the same time, because you just never know who you're going to meet.
You never know. No, that's so good. And it's true. I mean, those people are everywhere, and how often I try to check myself, right? Because I can get in my zone, have my AirPods in and walk. And I think sometimes I'm like, wow, I just missed anybody and everybody around me. And, sometimes I'm going through Whole Foods, I'm getting groceries, and I just have my AirPods in and whatever. And then when I see someone, I'm like low-key embarrassed that I'm like that person that's like just shutting people out around me. And it does. And it kind of, it's a heart check, right? And I'm like, okay, like, no, there's so many opportunities just to connect with somebody here. And to your point, in that, in that moment there, you sit down, you have a meal with this person, you learn so about him, and you're like, whoa, this is, look at that. So I'm trying to be more aware of that.
Yeah, and honestly, just talk to people. We lived in Phoenix, and they were having the World Baseball Classic there. And one day we're walking down the street. I'm Puerto Rican, and this lady had her hat on backwards, so we're walking up behind her, and
Yeah.
It was the team Puerto Rico. And I was like, yo, Puerto Rico. And she turned around and she was like, are you Puerto Rican? I was like, yeah. She's like, me too. And we started talking, and she's an Arizona State University graduate who was studying like the currents of the ocean and how it powers, like all this stuff. And the conversation lasted like 60 seconds, 120 seconds. And we both moved on in life, but it was just like a cool connection moment.
Totally. And you never know where that's going to happen. I mean, it's quite funny. I've been learning Serbian. My husband's Serbian, and I've been learning the language for the last couple of years. So and I can pick it up now when I hear people. And I get so excited when someone's in town and they're speaking Serbian. And I'm like, wait, ciao, stravo, kako si? Like, And they're like, huh? And then we talk, and then they're like, oh my gosh, so cool. Like, I'm like, yeah, I know. And then like that's kind of it. But you have these moments, of these small connections with people, and it's like, and it brings a smile to one another's face. And I think, hey, the more that we can smile and laugh, I'm all in for that, because there's enough stuff that happens in each of our lives, right, that we deal with.
Yeah, like
yeah.
we were talking about social media earlier, right? And
Yeah.
social media, it tends to do the opposite, right? We tend to be less social
Yeah.
because of social media. So we're looking at our phone, we're talking, texting, and we're not actually talking to each other, and we're not actually laughing with each other. We're just typing or posting. And I think when you go to, let's say, for your audience, next time you go to a coffee shop, sit down next to the stranger. Ask them, can I sit here, right? And just feel that human connection that we're missing because we can't do it through our phones or through email. And I guarantee you that you'll have a conversation, and before you know it, you'll be like, hey, I do X and I do Y, and ask them, what do you do for fun, right? And then next thing you know, those conversations will roll, and you'll just feel better, even if you never talk to that person ever again. It'll just in that moment, it'll make you feel better.
Yeah. I mean, it 100% does. And every time that you experience that a little bit, right? Or like, I would go and get an acai bowl at this place, and I would, kind of see the same person. And finally it's like, hey, what's your name? Like, we keep seeing each other. Like, you're serving me this food and I'm coming in as a regular person. We don't even know each other's names. So we exchange names. And then, the following weekend we ran into each other somewhere else. And I was like, oh my gosh, Rebecca. She's like, hey. And it's like, oh my gosh, now next time it's a little bit different,
I mean, I could tell stories all day long. I was at the African American Museum in Washington, D.C., and there was an older gentleman. He had to have been in his mid-70s, gray beard, gray hair, and he had a New York Giants jacket on, and I'm a New York Giants fan. And I walked up to him and I go, is this going to be the year they finally turn it around? And he was like, I doubt it. And then we start cracking up, and he had a patch on from the 86 Super Bowl. And I was like, man, that was such a good year. And his face lit up. Like, he couldn't wait to talk about this. Like, he's been holding onto this information for as long as he's alive since it happened. And he just wanted to talk to people about it. And it was just a magical connection. We laughed, and then we walked away. But look, it's 2 or 3 years later, I'm still telling the story.
Yeah.
And I think that is the magic of connection. And to tie it back to endurance sports, I think that is what happens when you train for a race and you're part of a run club or a triathlon club, or even when you're at the starting line with a stranger.
There's nothing like it.
There's nothing like
There's
it.
nothing like it. That's why I love doing these events, because when you're alongside these thousands of other people who all have their reasons for why they're running, it's just moving, and it's like you're part of this all together. No one's looking at, hey, you finished before me, or you finished behind me, or you whatever. Everyone's doing it together, and it's so powerful. It all ties together, right? In endurance sports and connection with people, and just, how that translates into other areas of life. And I really, really wanted to just hone in on this as we wrap up too, because what you just shared about interaction, with that guy in the Giants and everything. And once you brought up that Super Bowl, how it really opened him up and lit him up in those ways. And going back to earlier part in our conversation, it's like, people want to talk about the things that they care about. And we have the ability as people to ask questions to bring that out of one another. And there's so much, I think, possibility in that, right? Whenever we can go there with somebody and give somebody the space to share what it is that they care about. And so I love what you're doing in your platform, and literally amplifying the voices of everyday people, of everyday athletes, to do just that. So thank you for what you do, for who you are, for being here with me and having this conversation. I think we could really continue it for quite some time. So I hope for the opportunity to do it again.
I've got plenty of stories. I'm happy to share them all with you as you need be. It's like, I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan or not, but when Kramer sells his stories to Jay Peterman and he can't use them anymore, like that would be the worst thing I could possibly think of, because I've got so many stories that I'd love to share with you and your audience, and whether it's on a podcast or not, having conversations is so important to me.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'd love for you to join back in for another episode, Jason. So we will, if you're up for that, we will plan for that, and you'll be right back on the podcast, and we can get more into these stories, because I think there's many directions that we could go, and a lot to be shared. So I would love that.
Sign me up. Send a calendar invite.
I will.
Accept it.
I will. All right. No, thanks so much, Jason. Really appreciate you being here and having this conversation, and, all of your insights and wisdom, and just, I think, encouragement above all, for all of us, right? Not just in the endurance community, running community, but for just people, right? And the power of our voices, of our stories, and sharing them. So I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. This has been a blast. This has been one of the best interviews I've been on.
Oh my gosh.
This has been one of the best podcasts, because one, it didn't feel like you had like a litany of questions that you just wanted to get through as, trying to get through a Q&A scenario. It was literally just a conversation, and I really appreciate that, because that's how we conduct our conversations too, right? Like, we'll have a bullet point or two for some questions,
sure.
But somebody says something, like, first of all, that you're learning Serbian, that you're from Pittsburgh, and I'm like, holy shit, let's talk about pierogies.
Oh my gosh, don't get me started on pierogies. Jason, I haven't had a pierogi in forever, and I'm like, why can't I find a pierogi around here? Like, that's literally my favorite food.
Where are you at right now?
In Sarasota, yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't mean to do that.
Wait, seriously?
I'm dead serious.
Oh my gosh,
I
was like, oh yeah, Suzanne from Sarasota. No, she probably doesn't listen to No, I'm literally like, that's where I'm in Sarasota.
I try to use alliterations a lot of time. I'll be like, John from Joplin, Missouri. Just the alliteration always works well there, but that's hilarious.
Amazing.
But yeah, like when you start talking about Pittsburgh, because first of all, like I said, I'm Puerto Rican, and Roberto Clemente is, the godfather of baseball for us Puerto Ricans. And so like I could talk about him all day long. Like so many, and this is why you have conversations, right? This is exactly 100%. Why, because I could talk about this all day long.
Yeah, no, that's so true. Gosh, that's funny. Okay, that's great. To be continued. This 100% is to be continued. So I will see you back on the podcast soon.
Just throw me the calendar invite. We'll make it happen.
I will. All right. Thanks, Jason. Have a great night.
Bye.